Absolute heartbreak for Perez in this race at a time when he needed it the most to potentially secure his seat for next year and score some very valuable points for the Constructors' Championship. It's the last race of the 2020 season in Abu Dhabi, and after a chaotic year it's been, there was a lot to play for in this race. Hey everyone, welcome back to another race review where we put all the races in the 2020 season calendar up against each other to see which one's the worst and which one's the best. However, this is not the season finale, as we will be coming out with another video reviewing the entire season and scoring it. So don't forget to subscribe, as you won't want to miss out on that one. And of course, if you are enjoying this video at any point, don't forget to leave it a like and let us know in the comments how you viewed this race yourself. Cass, we had a very different starting order for this race. Our first non-Mercedes powered pole position went to Max Verstappen. How'd you view the start of this race?
I'd be lying if I said that I expected an exciting race start, because this track is simply not built for that. Max got away clean. We didn't really see that many overtakes going on, maybe some minor moves at the back, but overall, everyone mostly held their positions. Vettel overtook Charles and Ocon gained 2 positions in the first lap, but it just took so long for this race to kind of get going. It felt like we were waiting for some sort of action that just wasn't coming.
The main thing I was focused on for the opening laps was watching Perez making his way from P20 all the way up to P15, following a grid place penalty for a new engine. And it really looked like his car had some really good pace in this race to get it up into the points finish, which would have been super important for the Constructors' Championship.
But unfortunately, as we all know, we did not get to really see him race all that much today because his car just came to a very slow stop.
Really unfortunate to see. You could tell Perez was very frustrated after this race because he just came from a victory in Sakir to now DNFing in what could be his last race in Formula 1, so you really got a feel for the guy.
This brought out a virtual safety car, which meant that teams were rushing to get into the pits. Carlos eventually was under investigation for apparently driving too slow in the pits and potentially impeding Lance's race. You had a double pit stop from Mercedes, which Lewis was questioning if that was a good strategy. Some teams decided to stay out, some came in, and then eventually the virtual safety car was upgraded to a full-fledged safety car.
And so the safety car goes in, Max gets a great restart. He pretty much makes back the gap that he had before the safety car was deployed, pretty much eliminating any fear of Mercedes finally applying pressure onto him in this race. For the remainder of the first half, we just see some passing happening. We also see Stroll trying to fight for some additional points, but it didn't seem like his car had the pace this week, and also he had a really big lockup at one point. So we get to the halfway mark after 27 laps, and there hasn't been that many major changes in the standings versus where we started this race. Cass, how'd you view the first half?
I never really have very high expectations when coming to the Yas Marina circuit, but today just really fell flat after having such an overall exciting season, and especially with the drama of last week's race. I put my excitement at a 2. Because although it was nice to see a Red Bull leading, there's just not that much to say about the first half of this race. It was really dull. I did put the driving at a 3 because we saw some good overtakes. I saw that Pierre Gasly was making some pretty nice moves where he could. And then drama, I also put at a 3 just because of Sergio and the implications for the Constructors' Championship as a result. So that puts my first half score at roughly around a 2.5.
I was a little generous for the way I scored the first half of this race. I scored my excitement a 3 because I came in with all the anticipation of the previous weeks, but like you said, it fell a little short today. I scored the driving a 5 because I did find that there was a good number of passes going on in the first half. I also liked how the 2 DRS zones were one right after another, so sometimes you saw one car pass the other, and then on the next DRS zone they were able to reclaim that position back, so it wasn't just 2 cars chasing each other around the track and only one DRS zone to make a move on. In terms of the drama, I scored it a 5, which might be a bit high, but after Perez's incident coming out of nowhere, I was also nervous about teams double stacking. You also had the FIA involved for a potential penalty against Saints for slowing down the pit lane. There was just a lot of uncertainty at this time. Giving my first half a total score of 4.3, I'm just going to round that down to a 4 though. Going into the second half, I had the idea that we were going to see some tire degradation play a factor towards the end of this race. sadly to say, the second half of this race was worse than the first.
Aside from seeing Gasly once again pulling off multiple overtakes, there just was not that much action going on. I think one of the drivers that I was paying attention to a lot in the second half was Ricciardo, putting in 40 laps on that first stint. It was really amazing that he was able to manage those tires for so long. Impressed with the fact that Renault actually gave instructions to their drivers to swap places, because it was so clear that Daniel had a much faster race pace than Ocon did today.
Another person I didn't see really have that much race pace today was Albon, until later on in the race, of course. But once he got past Norris in the first half, I really thought he was going to start applying the pressure onto the Mercedes.
Speaking of Red Bull, Max came on the radio to say that he was feeling heavy vibrations in the car after gradually starting to feel the impacts of tire degradation. But of course, he then went on to set the fastest lap, so what do we know?
A common theme during this race week was track limits. Not only did we see it during qualifying, but we also saw it on race day, where a few drivers went over the curbs a bit too much, had their track times deleted, most notably Charles, who was given the black and white flag and just escaped getting a penalty. As we approach the end of the race, Albon's Red Bull finally kicks into gear, and he starts to dwindle down the gap between himself and Hamilton. We see him getting closer and closer, but there's just not enough laps left in this race for him to make a move. It would have been really spicy to see if he had a few more laps and was able to go wheel to wheel, but unfortunately, we'll never know.
That was about the closest thing we got to action until the very last lap, where we essentially saw Ocon pull off the overtake on Stroll at the last possible second. And speaking of which, Daniel Ricciardo also got the fastest lap of the race at the last possible second. So Max wins the race, the fireworks go off. This is the first time that Red Bull have won in Abu Dhabi since 2013. Mercedes are doing donuts on the track. Kevin's off doing his own donuts to celebrate his last race in F1. We're hearing heartfelt messages on the radio. We're singing songs on the radio. It's a grand old time, and I think most people are just kind of happy that this very chaotic and hectic season has come to a close, especially for the drivers that are looking to move on to their new teams.
But we still have a second half of the race to score here. Cass, how'd you view it?
Pretty badly, I'll be honest. I was feeling sleepy, so I put my excitement at a 1 because there was nothing going on. At this point, with Perez being out of the race and Stroll kind of not really being able to battle with the other midfield teams, it looked like the Constructors' Championship was solidified, whether Sainz got a penalty or not. It just kind of eliminated all of the first half questions that I had. Driving, I put at a 2, and that's through no fault of the drivers. It's just this track is not made for it. There's that DRS zone, and that is it, and we really didn't see that much going on in the second half. And then drama, I also put at a 2, and that essentially was only because of the ever so slight potential of Albon chasing down the Mercedes, but deep down I knew it wasn't really gonna happen. And then those last couple of overtakes and fastest lap being awarded on the final lap of the race. So that puts my overall score for the second half at a 1.5.
On my side, I scored my excitement pretty on par with the first half at a 3, because the only thing that really kept me excited was the potential of Albon catching up to Hamilton towards the end of this race. In terms of the driving, I only scored it a 3 because there was less quantity of overtakes happening in the second half over the first, but it was also always funny to see that it was always future teammates going up against each other around the track. For the drama, I only scored it at 1. There wasn't really anything intense or suspenseful happening in the second half, giving my score for the second half of this race a 2.5. So the official score for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix of 2020 is a 2.75. Here's the final scores of where all the races this season have been ranked. There's a lot to look forward to in 2021. There's new teammates, new drivers joining, some teams completely rebranding, but there's one thing that we know that won't be there, and that's DAS. And I'm really excited to see if that changes anything in the standings next year.
Spoiler alert, it probably will not.
But there's one thing you can count on being there next season, and that's another race review. So don't forget to subscribe, as we will be reviewing all races next season.
As per usual, make sure to follow us on social media at CCF1 channel. Just because it's the winter break does not mean that we are going to run out of content, so stay up to date and we'll see you on there.
Let us know in the comments how you viewed this race. We love to hear your thoughts, and we will catch you in the next one.
Bye.